You ever notice how confusing money feels today? You scroll through Instagram and see people your age driving Teslas, posting vacation photos from Greece, or bragging about investment portfolios. And then you look at your own bank account and wonder, am I doing okay or am I way behind? Here's the problem. Most of us have no idea where we actually stand. We hear words like middle class, wealthy, or poor, but nobody tells you the exact numbers. What net worth really separates poor from middle class and middle class from rich? Today, we're going to break it down, not just with numbers, but with what those numbers actually mean for your life. My name is Ivan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, net worth, and why most people misjudge where they actually stand financially. Some people who think they're rich are barely middle class, while others who quietly save and invest end up wealthier than they ever imagined. If you want to understand how wealth really works, not just the flashy version you see online, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see your own money differently. You wouldn't go to the gym without stepping on a scale or train for a marathon without tracking your runs. Money's no different. Most people never calculate their net worth. They don't know how much they own versus how much they owe. That's why so many live in illusion. Someone making six figures feels rich, but with debt and expenses, they're barely middle class. Meanwhile, someone else quietly saving and investing can end up far ahead. Until you know the real numbers, you can't tell where you stand or what to do next. So here are the raw numbers that most people never see. In the United States, the median household net worth, meaning the exact middle, where half the households have more and half have less, is around $121,000. Not bad, right? But here's the catch. The average net worth is way higher, closer to $746,000. Why such a huge gap? Because averages get pulled up by the ultra wealthy. The top 1% alone control more than a third of all household wealth in America. In other words, a tiny slice of people at the top are so rich that they make the whole system look wealthier than it really is. That's why comparing yourself to the average is misleading. Most people will never touch that number. The median is the reality check. But if you want to know whether you're poor, middle class, or rich, you have to zoom in on the net worth ranges that separate each group. This is the starting line. Nobody wants to admit they're on. Poor or lower class usually means a net worth under $20,000. And for many households, it's actually negative. Debt outweighs assets. What does that feel like in real life? It means bills pile up faster than your paycheck clears. Credit cards aren't for points and rewards, and they're lifelines to cover basic expenses. You're constantly choosing between which bill gets paid now and which gets pushed to next month. It's not just financial, it's psychological. Living in this tier puts your brain in survival mode. Every decision feels urgent. Every unexpected expense is a crisis. And here's the most brutal part. It's hard to build wealth when every dollar you make is already spoken for by past decisions, interest payments, or obligations you can't escape. But here's the truth most people miss. Being in this tier doesn't mean you stay here. Net worth is a snapshot, not a permanent label. Plenty of people who started deep in the negative, buried in student loans, credit card debt, or medical bills, managed to climb out. The key is shifting from just surviving to finally building assets. The lower middle class typically sits in the range of about $20,000 to $100,000 in net worth. On paper, this looks like progress, and it is. For many people, this is the first time they've got a positive balance sheet. Savings are growing, maybe there's a retirement account started, and debt is at least manageable. But here's the reality. In this tier, money still feels fragile. A single big emergency, a medical bill, a layoff, a family crisis can eat away years of progress. You're building, but the foundation isn't rock solid yet. Lifestyle-wise, this is where people start to feel normal. They can cover rent without sweating every month. They can replace a broken phone or fix a car without it turning into a financial catastrophe. Vacations happen, but they're modest. The key feeling here is stability with limits. Psychologically, though, this tier is tricky because it's the first time you feel like you're doing okay. The temptation to upgrade kicks in. The better car, the nicer apartment, the little luxuries. That's where most people stall out. Instead of using this stage as a springboard to build wealth, they plateau. The difference between staying here and moving up, guarding against lifestyle creep, and making sure more of your money starts going into assets instead of just expenses. The middle class usually falls in the range of about $100,000 to $500,000 in net worth. This is where things finally start to feel comfortable. You've got retirement accounts building, maybe some equity in a home, a decent emergency fund, and debt that isn't crushing you anymore. Day to day, life here feels secure. You're not worried about groceries or the electric bill. You can replace appliances when they break. Family vacations become normal, not a once-in-a-decade splurge. You can help your kids with school activities or start thinking about college savings. But here's where the psychology gets interesting. In the middle class, you're doing well enough that you don't feel poor, but not so well that you feel rich, and that creates tension. You look at people above you with nicer houses, luxury cars, or second homes, and it feels like they're living a different life altogether. At the same time, you look below you and feel grateful you're not struggling anymore. The danger of this tier is comfort. Comfort makes people complacent. It's easy to think, I've made it, I'm fine here, and stop pushing. But in reality, the middle class is where financial security begins, not where it ends. If you want true wealth, this stage is a stepping stone, not a destination. The upper middle class usually falls in the range of about $500,000 to $2 million in net worth. At this level, you've got serious assets, a paid down or fully owned home, retirement accounts stacked up, and maybe even investments beyond the basics. From the outside, people in this tier often look rich. They drive newer cars, live in desirable neighborhoods, send kids to good schools, and travel in style. This is the group most people picture when they imagine successful families. But here's the nuance. Upper middle class is not the same as wealthy. A big chunk of this net worth is often tied up in a primary residence, not liquid assets. That means while the numbers look high, the actual flexibility, the ability to take risks, invest heavily, or walk away from work might still be limited. Psychologically, this is the most confusing tier. People here often feel wealthy compared to their peers, but when they look up at the truly rich, they realize how much farther there is to climb. This is where the keeping up with the Joneses pressure really heats up. Bigger houses, private schools, luxury cars, the upgrades never end. The trap at this stage is mistaking high lifestyle for financial freedom. It feels like wealth, but it's often just a more expensive version of the same treadmill. The difference between getting stuck here and breaking through is turning net worth into income-generating assets instead of letting lifestyle absorb all the growth. The upper class generally starts around $2 million in net worth and up. This is where the game changes. You're not just secure anymore, you're free. At this stage, your assets generate enough income that work becomes optional. Maybe you keep working because you enjoy it, but the financial pressure is gone. Vacations, investments, big purchases, they're decisions, not sacrifices. What really separates the upper class isn't just the money, but the leverage that money provides. Opportunities appear that don't exist for the middle class. Business investments, second homes, early retirement, legacy planning. You're no longer just managing expenses, you're shaping the future. But here's something people get wrong. Being in the upper class doesn't always look flashy. Some of the wealthiest families live below their means, quietly compounding assets while others show off cars and houses. The true hallmark of this tier is control. You're not controlled by a job, a boss, or even by the economy in the same way. Your money gives you choices. The danger here is arrogance. People forget how rare this level of financial freedom is and slip into reckless decisions, overspending, bad investments, or trying to act rich instead of staying disciplined. The ones who stay wealthy, they treat money as a tool, not a trophy. The top 1% in the US usually means a net worth of around $10 million and above. At this level, you're no longer just well off, you're operating in a completely different world. Here, wealth isn't about paying bills or retiring early, it's about control. People in this tier have the ability to shape communities, industries, and even politics. Their investments don't just generate income, they create jobs, fund companies, and influence markets. Day to day, this is the lifestyle most people imagine when they think of rich, multiple properties, private schools for kids, elite social circles, financial advisors managing complex portfolios. Money problems don't disappear tapis, but they shift into different questions, like tax strategy, inheritance, or philanthropy. The psychological shift here is massive. When you have $10 million, risk feels different. A bad investment doesn't ruin you. A market crash doesn't change your lifestyle. You have resilience that 99% of people will never experience. But even here, there's a trap: comparison. In the world of the top 1%, there's always someone higher, the 0.1%, the billionaires. And that's why even multimillionaires can feel not rich enough if they measure themselves against the very top. The difference between just being rich and staying rich and keeping perspective. At this level, it's less about chasing more and more about protecting what you've built while using it wisely. Here's the part nobody talks about. These numbers don't feel the same everywhere. A net worth of $500,000 in a small town in the Midwest, that's upper middle class, maybe even wealthy. You own your home outright, your expenses are low, and your money stretches far. But take that same $500,000 and drop yourself in San Francisco, New York, or Los Angeles, and suddenly you're barely middle class. Housing alone eats everything. A normal house can cost over $1 million, and just existing in the city burns cash faster than you can make it. This is why money is so confusing. People compare themselves online to strangers without factoring in geography. Someone in Texas with $1 million might feel rich. Someone in Manhattan with the same net worth feels average. The point is this: net worth categories are real, but how they feel depends on where you live. That's why it's dangerous to measure yourself only against other people. You need to measure yourself against your environment, your cost of living, and your own goals. Here's what you need to remember. These categories aren't life sentences, they're snapshots. Where you are today doesn't have to be where you stay forever. People move up and down the ladder all the time. Someone buried in student loans with a negative net worth can, over a decade, climb into the middle class simply by living below their means and investing consistently. At the same time, someone who looks rich today can burn through millions if they let lifestyle inflation or bad decisions run their life. Net worth is dynamic. It's a reflection of habits, choices, and discipline. That's why the label you sit under right now doesn't define you. Your behaviors do. So don't get stuck on the number alone. Use it as a benchmark, not a prison. If you're in the lower tiers, the path upward is small steps. Cut debt, stack savings, buy assets. If you're higher up, the challenge is protecting and multiplying what you already have. Where you are is just a starting point. Where you end up depends entirely on how you play the game. At the end of the day, net worth isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's a reflection of how you think about money, how you handle decisions, and the identity you build over time. Poor, middle class, rich, these aren't just categories, they're mindsets. The poor mindset spends every dollar as soon as it comes in. The middle class mindset builds comfort, but risks getting stuck in lifestyle creep. And the wealthy mindset protects, multiplies, and uses money as a tool instead of a trophy. The truth is, moving up the ladder isn't about luck or some secret formula. It's about choosing the identity you want and then building habits to match it. Every dollar you save, every debt you pay down, every asset you buy, it's casting a vote for the future version of you. So don't just ask, what net worth separates poor, middle class, and rich? Ask yourself, which mindset am I living in right now? Because your net worth will eventually catch up to the way you think.